Welcome to True Crime, the Untold Stories. In today's episode, we delve into a case that encapsulates betrayal, jealousy, and a chilling murder within the high-stakes world of Manhattan's elite. This is the story of how an obsessed ex-husband's vendetta turned deadly, and how a sophisticated web of deceit led to an unexpected twist. Paige Alderidge, age 28, was one of the central figures in the tragic case that unfolded in July 2017. She was a well-known socialite and aspiring influencer living in Manhattan, New York City. Paige was known for her glamorous lifestyle and active presence on social media platforms like Instagram, where she showcased her luxurious life. Her posts often featured designer brands such as Chanel and Hermes, as well as pictures from high-end events and exotic vacations. Paige had attended New York's Fashion Institute of Technology, where she studied fashion merchandising. Her educational background, together with her stunning good looks, helped her build a career as a social media personality. Yet despite her outward charm and charisma, Paige was often described as materialistic and manipulative. She had a reputation for using her beauty and social connections to get what she wanted. Friends and acquaintances reported that Paige was driven by a desire for wealth and status, often using her relationships to advance her own agenda. In the months leading up to her death, Paige had been in a high-profile relationship with a wealthy Manhattan real estate developer, Lansdale Parks, and had recently moved into Parks's luxurious penthouse apartment in Manhattan's Upper West Side. Her marriage to her ex-husband, Callan Alderidge, had only recently ended in a bitter divorce, which centered on the couple's contentious battles over assets and alimony. Lansdale Parks, age 56, was Paige's new lover and another victim in this tragic case. Dale was a successful Manhattan real estate developer and was well known for his business dealings in upscale properties. Dale had a background in business, having studied finance at the University of Pennsylvania's prestigious Wharton School, one of the top business schools in the country. He was known for his confidence and charm, which made him a well-respected figure in New York's financial and social circles. He was often seen attending high-society charity events, always impeccably dressed in expensive tailored suits. Paige and Dale's relationship, marked by frequent social media updates and high-profile events, seemed like a fairy tale to many, but it was also fraught with complexities, including ongoing legal and financial disputes from Paige's divorce and the intense public scrutiny they faced. In the days leading up to their deaths, Paige and Dale were reported to be planning a luxurious summer vacation to the Italian Riviera. They had been seen shopping for high-end travel accessories and discussing their plans publicly. While the lives of Paige Alderidge and Dale Parks were characterized by their wealth and status, their tragic end shocked many and highlighted the harsh realities behind the glamorous facade. On the morning of July 10, 2017, the bodies of Paige Alderidge and Lansdale Parks were found in a luxurious penthouse apartment owned by Parks located on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. The grim discovery was made by Harper Parks, Dale's daughter. Harper had been trying to reach her father throughout the weekend, but had received no response. Growing concerned, she decided to visit the penthouse early in the morning. Harper arrived at the building around 8:30 a.m. She used her key to enter the apartment, which was supposed to be a haven of luxury and comfort. Instead, she was met with a scene of horror. Harper found Paige and Dale lying dead on the living room floor. Both victims had been shot multiple times with a handgun equipped with a silencer. The handgun had been recovered from the scene, but its serial number had been carefully removed, which suggested a degree of premeditation. Jewelry and other valuables were also reported missing, but there was no sign of a struggle, which suggested that the shooter had been familiar with both Paige and Dale or had managed to surprise them without putting up a fight. The initial reaction from Harper was one of shock and disbelief. She immediately called 911, her voice trembling as she reported the scene. When emergency responders and police arrived at the penthouse, they were greeted by a distressing sight. The luxurious living room, adorned with high-end furniture and artwork, was now a bloody crime scene. The apartment, previously a symbol of opulence, had now been transformed into a place of tragedy. As police began their investigation, they meticulously examined the crime scene for evidence. The apartment was carefully processed for fingerprints, DNA, and any potential clues that could point to the perpetrator. Investigators took photographs and collected evidence, including shell casings from the weapon used in the crime. The lack of forced entry into the apartment raised suspicions about whether the killer was someone known to the victims or had access to the property. The discovery of Paige and Dale's bodies marked the beginning of an intense investigation by the NYPD, as the upscale residents of the apartment building eagerly awaited answers about what had led to this tragic double murder. On July 10, 2017, the New York Police Department responded quickly to the crime scene at the penthouse apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. The call about the double murder came in around 8:35 a.m., and police arrived within minutes. The luxurious penthouse was now the focus of a major murder investigation. When the police entered the apartment, they were met with a disturbing sight. The living room, filled with expensive furniture, was stained with blood. Paige Alderidge and Lansdale parks were found lying on the floor, both victims of gunshots. The scene was carefully examined by forensic experts who documented the blood spatter and collected evidence from the area. Detectives from the New York Police Department's Major Case Squad took charge of the investigation. Detective Callan Alderidge, a 45-year-old veteran homicide detective with a reputation for solving complex cases, was one of the lead investigators. Detective Clark and her team meticulously examined the crime scene for clues. They took detailed photographs of the apartment and the positions of the victims. Forensic specialists collected samples of blood, fingerprints, and other potential evidence that might provide clues about the murderer. One significant detail that stood out was the lack of any sign of forced entry. This suggested that the killer might have had access to the apartment or knew Paige and Dale well enough to gain entry without raising suspicion, adding to the complexity of the case, as it indicated a premeditated and carefully planned crime. During their investigation, the New York Police Department also spoke to neighbors and building staff. They learned that there had been no unusual activity reported and that the building's concierge, who was on duty at the time, had not seen anything out of the ordinary. This lack of information from witnesses added to the challenge of solving the case. Detective Clark and her team worked around the clock, utilizing all available resources to solve the crime. As the days passed, the police continued to piece together evidence, analyze forensic results, and follow leads. For residents of the exclusive Upper West Side apartment, the investigation was one of the most talked-about cases of the summer, with everyone anxiously awaiting developments and answers about who was responsible for this tragic double murder. As the investigation into the murders of Paige, Alderidge, and Lansdale Parks progressed, the New York Police Department began to focus on Callan Alderidge, Paige's ex-husband, as a key suspect. Callan, age 30, was an up-and-coming attorney known for his work in corporate law. He lived in a sleek apartment in the financial district, an area known for its luxury high-rises and proximity to Wall Street. Callan's divorce from Paige had been contentious, and their split was far from amicable. The couple had gotten married soon after Callan graduated from Columbia Law School and got a job at the prestigious law firm of Cantor, Evans & Brown in Manhattan. However, soon after, Paige seemed to tire of her husband, and the marriage had ended bitterly after Paige had left Callan for an older, wealthier man. Their subsequent divorce had been very messy, involving a significant financial settlement, which had been very much to Paige's advantage. Callan was known for his intense jealousy and possessive personality. Friends described him as still being in love with Paige in spite of their split, who was deeply affected by the end of their marriage. The divorce had left him emotionally shattered and financially strained, making him a person of interest in the ongoing investigation. Detective Callan Alderidge decided to interrogate Callan about his whereabouts and actions leading up to the murders. On July 11, 2017, Callan was brought in for questioning. During the interrogation, Callan was calm but visibly anxious. Detective Clark questioned Callan about his recent activities and his relationship with Paige. Callan explained that he had been working long hours at his law firm and had no knowledge of or interest in Paige's current relationship with Dale Parks. He provided an alibi, stating that he had been at his office on the night of the murders and had left late in the evening. The police were skeptical of Callan's alibi. They noted that the timing of his statements did not fully align with the evidence they had gathered. Callan's intense demeanor and history with Paige made him a focal point in the investigation. The detectives also considered the possibility that Callan might have had a motive for the crime, given the contentious nature of his divorce and the financial strain he was under. Despite the intense focus on Callan, the police knew they needed more evidence to charge him with the crime. They continued to investigate his alibi and any possible connections he might have had to the crime scene. Callan remained a person of interest, but the detectives were cautious, ensuring that their investigation was thorough and unbiased. As the investigation into the murders of Paige, Alderidge, and Lansdale Parks progressed, the NYPD began to focus on Robin Griffin as a second suspect. Robin, age 36, was a private investigator who previously worked as a police officer. She ran her own investigation firm and was known for her sharp mind and thorough attention to detail. Robin was based in Manhattan, but her work often took her to various locations around the city. Robin had been hired by Callan Alderidge, Paige's ex-husband, to keep an eye on Paige in order to dig up dirt on her during their contentious divorce. This connection between Robin and Callan made her a person of interest in the case. She was reportedly involved in gathering information about Paige's new relationship, and her role in the case came under scrutiny. On July 12, 2017, Robin was called in for questioning by Detective Kristen Clark and her team at the NYPD's 20th Precinct Station House. During the interview, Robin was calm and collected. She explained that her job was to gather evidence for Callan's legal team and that she had no personal animosity towards Paige or Dale. She described her role as purely professional and insisted she had nothing to do with the murders. Robin told the detectives that she had been working on several cases around the time of the murders and had been busy with her investigation firm's other clients. She provided details about her activities and whereabouts, claiming she was working late into the night at her office on the evening of July 9th, the night of the murders. Detectives were cautious about Robin's statements. They reviewed her alibi and found that while she had been working, there were gaps in her timeline that needed clarification. Robin had access to various surveillance technologies and investigative tools, which made her a person of interest in the eyes of the police. Her access to information about Paige and Dale, combined with her knowledge of their movements, raised concerns about her involvement in the crime. Despite the intense police scrutiny on her, Robin remained composed throughout her interview. She cooperated with the police and provided them with all the information they requested. However, her connections to Callan and the fact that she was in the midst of investigating the victims herself at the time of the murders made her a significant figure in the case. As the investigation continued, the detectives analyzed Robin's involvement more closely. They reviewed her communication records, including emails and phone calls with Callan, to determine if there was any evidence of collusion or planning related to the murders. The police also checked her office for any evidence that might link her to the crime scene. The scrutiny of Robin Griffin's role in the investigation was an essential part of the case. Her professional background and the circumstances surrounding her involvement with Callan Alderidge made her a key figure in the ongoing investigation. The detectives had to carefully evaluate all aspects of her involvement to determine if she was connected to the murders or if her role was purely incidental. As later events would reveal, the New York Police Department's careful examination of her role and the evidence gathered during her interrogation were crucial steps in solving the case and bringing justice for Paige and Dale. Marcus Langford, 45, was the third suspect in the investigation of the murders of Paige, Alderidge, and Lansdale Parks. Marcus owned Langford Motors, a luxury car dealership in Manhattan that specialized in high-end brands like Ferrari and Lamborghini. Marcus was wealthy and connected, but also had a reputation for being somewhat unscrupulous, often involved in questionable business dealings. Marcus had also been romantically involved with Paige Alderidge, who initially left her husband Callan Alderidge for him. Their relationship had been intense, but ended badly just weeks before the murders. Soon after, Paige had moved on to a relationship with Lansdale Parks, which added to Marcus's frustration and anger. His temper and the history of his volatile relationship with Paige, therefore, made him a person of interest in the case. On July 13, 2017, for days after the murders, Marcus Langford was called in for questioning by the New York Police Department. Detective Clark conducted the interrogation. During the questioning, Marcus appeared agitated and defensive. He repeatedly denied any involvement in the murders and expressed shock and disbelief at the news. Marcus claimed that on the night of the murders, he had been working late at his dealership on preparations for an upcoming car show. He said he was alone in his office, which was located on the west side of Manhattan, about 10 miles from the crime scene. To verify his alibi, the detectives reviewed security footage from Langford Motors and spoke with his employees. While the footage showed Marcus in his office, it did not fully account for his whereabouts during the crucial hours of the crime. Detective Clark was also interested in Marcus's financial situation. They discovered that he was under considerable financial strain due to recent investments and outstanding debts. This financial pressure gave him a potential motive for the crime, as well as the fact that his relationship with Paige had been both emotionally and financially costly. Further investigation into Marcus's background revealed a pattern of risky behavior. His past included several high-profile legal disputes and business controversies. His explosive temper and emotional instability, especially after his breakup with Paige, raised additional concerns for the detective. Reports from acquaintances and former associates described him as someone who could react violently when faced with personal setbacks. Detective Clark continued to investigate Marcus, focusing on any connections he might have had to the crime scene and the victims. She examined his phone records and bank statements, looking for any evidence of suspicious activity. She also re-interviewed people who knew Marcus and had been around him in the days leading up to the murders. Despite the evidence against him, Marcus maintained his innocence. He stated that he had no reason to harm Paige or Dale and expressed frustration at being considered a suspect. As the investigation progressed, Marcus Langford remained a significant suspect, with his actions and motives under close scrutiny. On July 15, 2017, 6 days after the shocking murders of Paige, Alderidge, and Lansdale parks, the New York Police Department made a significant breakthrough in the case. The weather that day was hot and humid, typical for New York City in July. Detectives were still working tirelessly to find clues that would lead them to the killer. The breakthrough came when a new piece of evidence was discovered by the building's maintenance staff. While cleaning out a dumpster just outside of the penthouse building, workers discovered a small, discarded security camera. The discovery was reported to the New York Police Department, and detectives quickly moved to examine the camera for any useful footage. The camera was later identified as a GoPro, a popular brand known for its durable and portable cameras used for capturing high-quality video. The GoPro had been set up to record video, but it was unclear how long it had been operating or what it might have captured. Detectives were hopeful that the footage could provide crucial information about the events leading up to the murders. After retrieving the camera, forensic experts analyzed the video files. The footage revealed a surprising twist. The camera had recorded parts of the night when the murders occurred. The video showed a man, identified as Callan Alderidge, entering the penthouse around midnight, just hours before Paige and Dale were found dead. This footage confirmed Callan's presence at the scene, adding a significant piece of evidence to the investigation. The video provided a visual timeline of the night, showing Callan entering the penthouse and the moments leading up to the murders. The discovery of the GoPro footage proved to be a major turning point in the case. It shifted the focus of the investigation and provided new insights into the events of the night. With this new evidence, the New York Police Department intensified their efforts to piece together the full story. They interviewed additional witnesses and reviewed other surveillance footage from nearby cameras to gather more information. On July 17, 2017, the New York Police Department made a major breakthrough in the case of the murders of Paige, Alderidge, and Lansdale parks. After days of intense investigation and mounting evidence, Detective Kristen Clark identified Callan Alderidge as the killer. Callan, age 30, had been at the center of the investigation since the beginning due to his high-profile and contentious divorce from Paige. The breakthrough came when police reviewed new evidence from a hidden camera that had been installed outside of Dale Parks' penthouse and then discarded sometime after the murders. Not only had the footage identified Callan as entering the penthouse just before the murders, but the camera had been traced back to Robin Griffin, the private investigator hired by Callan. A subsequent investigation of Robin's email and text messages revealed that after installing the camera as part of her surveillance of Paige and Dale, she had accidentally captured Callan entering the penthouse and had then orchestrated a scheme to blackmail him. Robin's plan was to use her knowledge of Callan's involvement in the murders to extract money from him by threatening to expose the compromising camera footage to the police. When Callan eventually paid to keep her silent, she disposed of the camera in the dumpster. On the morning of July 17th, Detective Kristen Clark, who had been leading the investigation, received the final pieces of evidence linking Callan Alderidge to the crime. The footage showed Callan entering the penthouse, and investigators found further proof that Callan had planned the murders. He had also been seen on surveillance cameras near the building around the time of the crime, and forensic evidence tied him to the murder weapon. The police quickly moved to arrest Callan. Early in the afternoon, officers arrived at his apartment on the Upper East Side. The arrest was conducted without incident. Callan was calm and composed when the police took him into custody. During his arrest, Callan did not show much emotion. He was photographed being led out of his apartment by officers, his expression blank and his demeanor unfazed. This lack of visible reaction caught the attention of both the media and the public, adding another layer of intrigue to the case. In the days following his arrest, Callan's motivations and actions were analyzed in depth by the police. It was revealed that his bitterness over the divorce and his financial desperation had driven him to drastic measures. Callan had been struggling with mounting debts and a significant financial settlement owed to Paige as part of their divorce agreement. He was also still deeply in love with his ex-wife, and his actions were driven by a mix of jealousy, anger, resentment, and a desperate attempt to recover some of his losses. The trial of Callan Alderidge began in August 2017, just a month after his arrest for the murders of Paige, Alderidge, and Lansdale Parks. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Naomi Robinson, 45, who was known for her strong track record in handling complex cases. Robinson presented a compelling case against Callan Alderidge. She argued that Callan, driven by jealousy and financial desperation, had planned and carried out the murders of his ex-wife Paige and her new partner, Lansdale Parks. The prosecution highlighted the evidence from the hidden camera, which showed Callan entering the apartment on the night of the murders. They also presented forensic evidence linking Callan to the crime scene, including DNA evidence tying him to the scene and surveillance footage from around the building. The defense attorney, Dustin Hayes, 52, had a reputation for his skillful but sometimes controversial defense strategies. Hayes argued that Callan was being framed and that the evidence against him was circumstantial. He suggested that Robin Griffin, the private investigator, was the real killer and had manipulated the situation to frame Callan and cover her own tracks. Hayes claimed that Callan had been a victim of Robin's scheme and that the real motive behind the murders was Robin's desire for blackmail money. Throughout the trial, the emotional reactions of Paige's and Dale's families were evident. Paige's mother, Piper Anderson, and Dale's daughter, Harper Parks, were often seen in the courtroom. Piper, visibly distraught, wiped away tears during the testimony, while Harper appeared somber but determined to see justice served. The impact of the crime on their lives was palpable and became a focal point in media coverage. After 2 weeks of testimony and evidence presentation, the jury began deliberations. On August 30th, 2017, Callan Alderidge was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. The verdict was met with a mix of relief and sadness. While the conviction brought some sense of justice, it could not undo the tragedy that had unfolded. In the sentencing phase of the trial, District Attorney Robinson argued for the maximum penalty, citing the premeditated nature of the crime and Callan's actions to evade responsibility. Dustin Hayes pleaded for leniency, presenting arguments about Callan's troubled state of mind and the manipulative actions of Robin Griffin. On September 5, 2017, Callan Alderidge was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial had a significant impact on Paige's and Dale's families, who were left to cope with their grief and the aftermath of the trial. Piper Anderson and Harper Parks expressed their hope that the sentence would help them find closure. Yet, despite justice being served, the pain of losing Paige and Dale remained a heavy burden for their loved ones. The case also had broader implications, highlighting the complexities of human relationships and the consequences of financial and emotional desperation. The dramatic twists in the case provided a sobering reminder of the tragic outcomes that can result from personal conflicts, obsession, greed, and deceit. Hey, interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like our content and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories. Do you have any thoughts about this case or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Until then, stay safe. After the trial and sentencing of Callan Alderidge in September 2017, the lives of everyone involved in the case began to shift. For the families of the victims, the trial's conclusion brought a mix of closure and continued heartache. Piper Anderson, Paige's mother, faced an ongoing struggle to cope with the loss of her daughter. She received support from friends and family and sought help in therapy sessions, trying to come to terms with the tragic loss. Piper also began participating in support groups for victims' families, hoping to find some solace and help others dealing with similar grief. Harper Parks, Dale's daughter, similarly faced a challenging path forward. She had been a significant figure during the trial, and after the sentencing, she retreated from public view for a time to focus on her personal well-being. Later, Harper worked to keep her father's memory alive by setting up a charitable foundation in his name, aimed at supporting victims of violent crime. The foundation hosted events and raised awareness about the impact of such crimes on families. Callan Alderidge, now serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole, was transferred to the Upstate Correctional Facility in Malone, a maximum security prison in upstate New York. Inside prison, Callan faced a difficult adjustment to life behind bars, with his case often being discussed by fellow inmates and prison staff. Robin Griffin, the private investigator who was initially suspected of the murders but later revealed to be the perpetrator of a scheme to blackmail Callan, faced her own legal challenges. After the truth came out about her involvement, Robin was charged with blackmail, obstruction of justice, and other related offenses. She was tried separately and found guilty of her crimes. Robin was sentenced to a total of 7 years in prison, reflecting the severity of her actions. The story of Paige Alderidge and Lansdale Parks is a stark reminder of how personal vendettas, financial pressures, and rapidly emotional turmoil can escalate into violence. The case serves as a testament to the complexities of human relationships and the dark paths they can sometimes lead us down. Thank you for joining us on True Crime, The Untold Stories. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant.